Wow. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. This is wonderful. I'm delighted to welcome you to the National Book Festival. I'm the Librarian of Congress, and I want to give a shout out to the audience right here, this wonderful big audience right here in the Convention Center, but also to the thousands of people who are joining us virtually from across the country and around the world. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I also want to give a special thanks to our co-chair of the National Book Festival, Mr. David M. Rubenstein. Thank you. Wouldn't be possible without him. He's a very generous donor to the Library of Congress. And this year, it's our special honor to welcome Elliot Page to this year's National Book Festival. Elliot is an Academy Award-nominated actor, a producer, and a director. His debut memoir, Page Boy, shares behind-the-scene details of his rise in Hollywood and his experience in untangling his true self in a web of expectations. When the New York Times reviewed Page Boy, their reviewer wrote that the memoir is, quote, powerful and, quote, brutally honest. And so, it just so happens, we asked that reviewer to moderate this program. Gina Chow is the executive editor at Semaphore, a new global news startup. And prior to using Semaphore, she was executive director and editor at Rutgers, the editor-in-chief of the South China Morning Post and the Asian Wall Street Journal in Hong Kong, a deputy managing editor at the Wall Street Journal in New York, a foreign correspondent in Singapore, Manila, and Hanoi, and a television and radio journalist in Singapore. A native of Singapore, Gina transitioned in late 2020, making her one of the most senior transgender journalists in the industry, and as she will tell you, a very forgiving person in terms of pronouncing her last name. So we're glad that they're both here. Please welcome to the National Books Festival stage, Elliot and Gina.
Thank you all for coming. She did get it right, by the way. So I'm Gina, in case you were wondering. This is Elliot. If you didn't come to see either of us, then I think there's some other good panels somewhere, and you can go to those. Actually, I lie. You are not going to get a better panel than this one, so just stay. And I might even let you ask questions afterwards. Okay, so before we get going, let me give one more thanks to David Rubenstein, the co-chair of the National Book Festival, for sponsoring this stage, the Creativity Stage. So we are going to dive right into it. So, Elliot, you told the world who you really were in December 2020. I did the same 3 weeks later. I swear I was not copying you, which makes us more or less both like 2.5 years old, right? So more seriously, right, as we see in Page Boy, we spend so much of our life, our mental energies, our focus working up to like that momentous day, when in fact the real joy, the real celebration, the real challenge is in living our lives as we should be. How has it been, post-transition? What surprised you most about life after you became you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I obviously had a feeling that making those steps was going to improve my well-being, was going to help with sort of endless discomfort that I'd felt for a long, long time. I could have never imagined in a million years just how different I feel, how centered, how present, the space in my mind to be creative, to feel inspired, I could have never sat down and written a book before. No way. I wouldn't have had the space mentally, and I just wouldn't have been literally able to sit down for periods like that. And so I think it really is, pardon the pun, the degree of transformation on all levels for me and how it's manifested.
I know, I tell everybody, post-transition, I gained like 15 or 20% of cognitive ability because I just wasn't spending time thinking about it. Now it's just this.
You really, really feel how much you were losing, you know, in regards to just living your life and getting to embrace life.
So you took that spare brain capacity and you turned it into a book. It's often said, you know, you write a memoir because there's a burning question you want to ask yourself. What was that question, and were you happy with the answer?
Yeah, I think the question was, which kept coming up as the process of writing it, was, why did this have to take so long? Like, why did this take so long? And just this, you know, when you're sitting down to write something and reflecting from your earliest memories as a toddler, obviously, to where you find yourself in the present, and to know that I'm in this, how deeply I knew this for so long.
Well, at 6 years old, you asked your mother, "Can I be a boy?"
Yeah.
She said no, but...
Yeah. Spoiler alert, she said no. And why did there have to be such interference that I think really did, you know, I'm grateful for the journey, I'm who I am because of all, you know, all of that, but I do just feel like there's a lot of time that I lost.
So partly, I'm wondering, so as you write this book and you explore yourself, how much of that do you think was you're writing the book because you wanted to answer that question, because you wanted to explore it for yourself? And how much of it do you think was you were writing it for an audience? You wanted them to understand something about you, you wanted them to understand something about the journey that people like us take. Where's that? I mean, I know it's not 100% one way or the other, but where's that mix in your mind about why you did the book?
Yeah, I mean, I think on some level, like when I first started to write like a proposal, it really did feel like a spark, and just words started coming out. Like it felt quite organic, stream of consciousness. The first chapter in the book's actually the first thing I wrote, and it's close to the same as that first day when I wrote. And the sensation was just so exhilarating, as I said, because something like that wouldn't have been possible before, and that was like selfishly something I wanted to cling to. I was like, what's going on? And it was obviously as the process grew that it became more about, you know, what it does mean for other people to read this, and what you do want to share, and knowing that. And I suppose for me, in writing it, are the moments where I felt scared or insecure about sharing certain things. I really reflected on how much books have helped me, and how various writers in their, you know, vulnerability and generosity in terms of sharing parts of themselves that had a great impact on me. And I think that was something that I thought a lot about while writing the book, and pushed me when I did feel intimidated or apprehensive. Or
Which books really moved you? Which ones helped you get on the path that you ultimately?
Gosh, I mean, many authors that I love. You know, and Thomas Page McBee's book, Amateur. If you haven't read it, superb book.
Please go and buy it. He's a friend of both of ours. He
Yeah.
can use the sales.
Yeah.
It's good.
really amazing. And Carmen Maria Machado's In the Dream House. Yes, absolutely. Alexander Chee's How to Write an Autobiographical Novel. And, you know, Maggie Nelson's Argonauts and Bluets, and Saeed Jones' How We Fight for Our Lives, and Punch Me Up to the Gods by Brian Broom, and you know, so I could probably keep going here.
No, fair.
Rebecca Solnit's, you know, A Field Guide to Getting Lost, and Recollections of My Non-Existence, and yeah, those are the sort of books that just have unique structure and manage to weave in and out and talk about, you know, talk about so much. And
So you talk, you know, so your book's got a very unique structure of its own, right? It's very non-linear. You pop back and forth. I think you've said that that kind of reflects the way we reflect on our journey. How intentional was that to sort of take that? Did an editor come to you and said, no, you've got to follow some kind of timeline here? Or, I mean, how much of that was sort of constructed and how much of that sort of came out of you?
it was something I did want right out the gate. I wanted the book to be nonlinear, and even it was as if I knew that that chapter I wrote that day was going to start the book. And so the book starts when I'm 20. I think I'm 16 in the last chapter, so it really goes all over the place. I was supported by, you know, I think I said it when I was meeting with publishers, you know, wanted the book to be nonlinear. Yeah, for me at least, it reflects, I think, speaking for myself, the queer and trans experience, that it's not very linear. You know, we get close and then we pull back and closer and back, and, you know, that sort of dynamic. And I think particularly in trans narratives, we talk so much about the before and after, when really it's, you know, so much about integration and integrating all these parts of ourselves that we've known and are rediscovering and are finding again, and, you know, that spark of what it means to be alive. So that's sort of what I was trying to do with that.
That's a lovely line about the not a before and after and integration. Can you expound a little bit more on how you think through that?
Yeah, I think in moments in my life, especially when I was really little, probably like 10 years old, was where I felt, you know, probably the closest to myself until finally, you know, and having these periods in my life of knowing and then feeling afraid and backing away, or coming out as gay in 2014, which obviously wasn't ultimately where I needed to be, but a massive step towards getting there. I mean, I was viciously closeted until I was 27 years old. And so yeah, to me, it's so much about rediscovering, you know, the person we've always known is there, and paying attention to them, and nurturing that, yeah.
So I think at the beginning of your book tour in New York at this theater inside, if you see a picture of a selfie, like I'm the one standing over there holding up your book, you can zoom in on it. So I wasn't sure where it was. I was walking past and I got to the theater and I looked around, and there was like the biggest young queer group of people I'd ever seen outside of a club in Bushwick. So I thought, okay, this is the right place. And that was, you know, that was a great crowd. They obviously loved you. They loved the book. What do you want them, or what would you like them to take away from the book? Or to put it sort of another way, let's say you were in the audience at 20 years old or 25 years old, and you were talking to yourself. What would you want to say to yourself then?
I think something I keep coming back to, you know, for myself, reflecting on certain difficult periods, and getting to where I've been able to get to, is the shame you feel, the shame you're holding, it is not yours. it is not yours. And and the moments that are so challenging to really commit to letting ourselves like, step into our full selves, which can be scary and overwhelming, is so worth it. It's so worth it.
Amen.
Yeah. So.
You write in the book about how, after Juno especially, the Hollywood machine, right, the starlet machine, basically infantilized you, put you into an identity that you didn't want, but off screen as well as on screen. And then you talk about how, after you came out, you told the world who you were, that even your friends, in a way, didn't believe you, right? And I write in my review that, trans women are demonized as predators, and trans men are, well, you're just you just misguided women and girls, right? I mean, has any of that changed since the book has come out? Have you sort of regained a sense of agency? Have people moved past it? Have you moved past it? Does it matter? But,
I think if anything, it's just been a bit more time, so I'm a little more, how do you say it? Like is it awful to be like, I guess I'm just more like used to it. Like I'm kind of like in this space where I think I'm less affected by what other people say or may or may not think or what have you. And yeah, I'd say I just feel like inherently able to kind of block that out on some level.
Well, let me switch to a slightly more political question. We'll come back to the book in a sec. So we're in DC. You can go to the bathroom. I can go to the bathroom. There's one like just outside if we want to do that. But there are places we can't, right? I mean, I think it's a 1-year jail term in a couple of places. And if I read the law carefully, I think there's places you can't technically perform or that your works can't be seen. I know you're on strike now, but assuming this gets resolved this century. So, I mean, how does it affect how you think about where and how you work in the future?
I mean, I think probably like so many others, so many of us, it's just there are moments where you're like, what's the future gonna be, What does it mean to be an actor in front of the camera or a trans person telling stories? And obviously so many more other things that come of that, but I think there is just that low-key anxiety, of course, not even low-key, about what changes are going to take place in terms of who is going to end up in office. And
I guess I'm not sure I'm optimistic, but I'd like to be optimistic. What do you think the power of visibility, either in fiction or nonfiction, is to try and move people to a greater sense of understanding, acceptance? I mean, it's sort of funny, right? Because it's not like we need acceptance. We're here. But I'd love to know how you think about the role of culture in changing minds.
yeah, I mean, look, I think it's complicated. I think representation, visibility is crucial. When I was growing up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, when I was like, I didn't have examples. I didn't, there was no queerness. There was like that. I had very little to look to, and I know in the tiny little sparks of moments when I did, anything that I slightly resonated with made such a profound impact on me. Like stumbling on, but I'm a cheerleader on TV when you're 14. Yes. And how much that meant, how major those moments were. And then, of course, with visibility and representation comes backlash. And needless to say, the most vulnerable members of the community suffer the brunt of those consequences. So it's about how can we be, visible and represent, while also being mindful of the work that needs to happen and needs to get done to make sure that everybody is feeling, the benefits of progress, where right now that's not the case.
You talked about role models. I wanted to ask you, because it's not really a question that you truly dive into the book. I wanted to ask you what it means to you to be a man. If I read reasonably carefully the book, there's not a ton of really positive male role models in the book. And so I'm wondering kind of how you developed a conception of yourself as a man, and where does that come from, and how you think that through, especially given, again, from what I understand of your story, the kind of the lack of models that you might have had.
Well, it's to go back to our friend Thomas, Amateur Thomas's book, that had a really profound effect on me, especially like the beginning of, just right when I began my transition, really. And that book is so much about him contemplating, Thomas is trans, contemplating masculinity and what it means to be a man, the expectations of a man, emotionally, how to be physically, every little aspect. And in the midst of his transition and his exploration with his relationship and I'm so grateful to him for that book, because I feel like so many of the thoughts that were swirling around in my mind, he was, talking about, which made me feel less alone, and also really offered some guidance about I can be the man, that I want to be me, which is just to be me, and that being sensitive and being expressive and being all of those things can still exist. And I feel for the pressure, what it must be like, the pressure to not be emotional, to not be sensitive, to not share your feelings, and I'm sort of grateful for all the experiences I have had in my life, even the negative ones that did involve men, because it allows me to, I think, show up as how I think I should as a man.
Don't show emotions. I've been there, done that. So I know, and I'm genuinely hopeful and confident that your book will do the same for another generation of young trans people. So I wrote in the review that the book was brutally honest, and it's painful at parts. I mean, certainly it was very painful for me to read at parts. How was it like for you to recall, report, recount those episodes in the book? Is it cathartic? Is it traumatic? Was there anything you sort of said, I can't do this, and pulled away?
I mean, it was both things. It was, writing the book was mostly healing and cathartic. Like, I think it was massively important for me. But yes, writing certain things unavoidably was was difficult. I would notice like a physiological response, sweaty, pause, pause.
You're a man. That's what happens.
Okay.
They didn't tell you that?
Yeah. Sweaty palms, and just this physical reaction. So I did try with the writing balance it out. So I'd be like, okay, this week I've written about this rather intense incident. So next week I'll write about being 9 and getting to wear a Speedo and trans joy.
Yeah.
There were moments. There was some things that I was like, I don't quite want to go that far. So.
It's been an honor. It's been incredibly moving. I would tell all of you go out and buy Elliot's book, but you're sold out. All copies have been sold out. So just get on. Go to your nearest queer-owned independent bookstore and buy 10 copies. So there you go. And so I think it just leaves me to say thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and the rest of us. I give you Elliot Page.
Thank you so much. Thank you.